because I think we've got a lot on the go here, and at some point down the road, you know, we'll see where this leads. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to put a full-time person in or whatever, but if we do some things contractually to start, that's at least we're doing something.
Right. Hey, Carrie, I got a question. Did you ever get a chance to talk with your EPA contact about what you had mentioned the other time we met?
I have he's supposed to give me some meeting dates, so we haven't had a formal conversation, but we are going to talk hopefully in the next 2 weeks. And I was on a phone call yesterday with a group that's planning the meeting for our professional organization in July, and Andrew Thasson, who was on the call, also confirmed what Kevin Keeney said about the grant that has the money that comes to the pesticide programs was imminently going to be awarded. And he told us at APCO 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks, but so he is also going to hold him a little bit to the fire and say, tell us exactly what that means, because I can't get an answer. But we're still working on that then.
I will say, unfortunately, with the way the budget stuff is right now, that idea you had might be a viable route if they're willing to entertain that.
Yeah, and we'll have to see. But the other thing that in the vein of funding and that the project that Chris talked about with the registered technician training and moving into online, was that you're definitely going with that group, or has anything been decided?
We actually, I think if I'm not talking about the same thing, you just have to holler, but we've been working with the state's IT department and Office of Management and Budget, and we got to go ahead from our end because I think it's going to be expensed through our contractual line item on the C&T budget side of things.
Right.
And so what we're going to do is basically phase out that registered service employee pesticide safety training DVD,
right,
and then convert that course into an online version. And it's going to be through the OMB's Delaware Learning Center. And basically it'll be a web-based, it's basically the existing CD, but it's going to be reformatted for web-based access. And then so that's gone through both an English and a Spanish version. And then we also basically took that same CD and picked out certain modules that would apply for the new C&T rule requirement about non-certified applicators using restricted use pesticides operating under a private applicator's certification. So what we're doing with that is basically making a condensed version of that registered service employee DVD, and then that's also going to be on the Delaware Learning Center. I don't think there's going to be a huge demand for that, but it's available if somebody wanted to do it in that situation. Honestly, I think most of them just send them up and do the private applicator test because it's free anyhow.
right.
So, but that gives the farming community an option.
But that's definitely going to be done through your internal state agencies.
Yes, yeah, because I think the way the budget line items are set up in the past, actually currently, whenever you charge for that CD, DVD thing, I don't think it can be expensed, anything can be expensed through an EPA grant for some reason. Since we would now be basically foregoing the sale of that product, and to my understanding, then that can be used as part of our C&T contractual line item budget. So I guess it was the technicality of actually offering it for sale versus not for sale is what could change up what pools of money that you could utilize.
And I'm not, please don't take this the wrong way, and I know it wasn't a lot of money, but that's an example of how I would hope that in the future we get this mindset of if something like that comes up and there's an ability to put some funding towards doing it, that he would think to call Michelle and the folks at the university. So.
Right.
But that's probably above your pay grade and mine, but I just, wanted to say that. Emily?
Well, that the way it ended up, the budget thing was just the way it was, but the main point of concern from our end was that the CD was developed before Windows 10 operating system came online for Microsoft, and it's essentially everybody's having compatibility problems with Adobe Presenter. So the OMB, they had a solution for being able to handle that and being able to get it away from a CD format. So it was just an option that we had at the time, and we just chose to take it out given the circumstance.
I understand that. I appreciate it, but I'm just hoping that maybe in the future that we can think about if you need something like that done, we can talk about it. And I realize that the way that all came about was because you asked a question and all of a sudden you got in the middle of that whole conversation. But I'm hoping that maybe something that in the future we can work towards looking ahead and saying, oh, these are some things we'd really like to do, and is there a contractual line item available to do them? So.
Right.
No problems. I just wanted to find out where that was at.
Okay.
Emily, did I see Emily? She's here. Oh.
Yeah, so I don't know why we're not seeing, why we're not seeing the screen. Allison, we're not seeing the screen with this now on we're seeing Amy's document, but we're not seeing who's on the call. So I don't know.
That's because she's sharing her document.
Can you see the Word document?
Oh. Okay. All right. So thanks, Emily, for joining us. We have Ben on the line, and Carrie, Amy, and I are here, and you're the other person that's here. We haven't had very many people join us here, but we're working through the agenda. We just talked about our progress report. This was part of the grant funding that we were required to do. You had a copy of that attached, and that's just the documentation of all the things that have been going on since we last had a conversation. So I think we want to talk now about the current projects to meet year 3 of our obligations, which is where we're at now. And we have some things that we need to do through this year end, which is June 30th, to get to that point where we have some obligations we have to do. And one of those things is this online course survey, and Amy's been providing leadership for that. And so I'm going to turn it over to Amy to talk about where we are with that right now.
Thanks, Michelle. One of the things that we had to do was take a look at the options that Delaware has for online training. And I thought it would be helpful to put it in context with other states as well. Because most online training, as Carrie and Ben were just talking about some online training for registered employees, a lot of states don't necessarily produce the online training materials themselves, but they may share them from other states, or they may use them from private companies. Distance learning type courses range from non-proctored, asynchronous, self-directed models to proctored, synchronous, instructor-led webinars. Everything goes around the states as to who allows what. Some of them are very good. Some of them are probably less good. Most people agree that there are at least times when online training can be really, really helpful, especially as an addition. In 2015, in our report, at that time, we noted in our stakeholders report that the Delaware Department of Agriculture considered some online training to be very good, which is great. Many educators consider online training to be a less desirable option compared to face-to-face, but again, we can't always do face-to-face training, and it's important to have some of these things available. So what I wanted to do was to look at what's available around the states and how many states are doing what. I want to set this up a little bit first. I used the American Association of Pesticide Safety Education Programs listserv to do the survey. I sent out a request for people to go to a survey,
Survey Monkey.
It wasn't Survey Monkey. It's the other one. Oh well. To go to the survey and fill it out. And we had participation by 35 US states plus 1 Canadian province. And this group, AFSI, is the professional association for those with pesticide safety education programs running in their states. Some of them are extension people, some of them are state lead agency people, some of them are private, and some of them are other government sources. So when I totaled up the numbers, I had 35 states and 1 Canadian province responding. In this survey, I didn't ask whether states have options for all categories, and in fact, it's likely they don't. So where you see a yes response, it could indicate anything between a single module for a single category all the way up to multiple options for all categories. And my understanding from all the states is these things are changing all the time, what they accept and what they don't accept, based on who's developing new materials and so forth. Also, some states don't use on-training at all yet, but they plan to do so by the end of 2017. There were about 3 states like that, and I included them as yeses under this. There were other states that had hazy plans to start using it at some time, but no real timeline, so I included them as no's. And some states reported that they allow applicators to use the online option with parameters. I'll get to that in just a moment. If we start with the in-state 1A, which is states offering the online training designed to, of any type, designed to help private applicators study for the initial exam. 9 states and 1 Canadian province said yes. 26 states said no. I was actually surprised at that. I thought there would be more offering online certification preparation training.
And we're one of those.
And we are one of those. We do offer it. And I think it probably is considered very helpful by the applicators who take advantage of that. 1B was which states and how many are offering online training designed to help commercial applicators study for the exams. 10 states and 1 Canadian province do, 25 states do not. There are sort of more considerations there. Allison, can you move the page up so that we can see the full rest of the page, starting with recertification training? Keep going.
Just give me 1 second.
There you go. Okay, that part. That's good. So question 2A, with states offering online training that allows private applicators to earn credit toward recertification, there were 23 US states and 1 Canadian province that do, 10 US states that don't, and 2 US states that said it's not applicable. Probably because they don't, under the current law, have recertification requirements. That will change in March. March, it's already past that due date, but they're moving that. It's a moving target. So 2B, states offering online training that allows commercial applicators to earn credit for recertification. 24 US states plus 1 Canadian province, 10 US states don't, and 1 not applicable, again, 1 US state. And then the last question, Allison, if you can move it to the next page. There we go. So this was, to me, pretty interesting because this asked whether states limit the number of times the option can be used. That is, either an applicator can't recertify entirely with credit from online, or they can't do it every single cycle. The idea is some states will allow them to use the same option every time, and some states don't limit that. As far as the numbers go, 10 US states do limit it, 17 US states and 1 Canadian province do not limit it. And in 9 states, it's not applicable because they don't have the option. But for the ones that either do or do not place limits, some states reported a little bit more fully and said that their reasoning was they allow applicators to use the online option an unlimited number of times right now because they don't have any other good options. But as more courses become available, or either in face-to-face or online, they plan to limit the number of times or the number of courses that you can use to satisfy those credits. That is, they consider the online recertification options to be good when there's for emergency situations or for occasional use, but most of the time they recognize that it doesn't really, it may not keep applicators up to date as well as some of the other options do. And besides, you don't want really people retaking the same course over and over and over just to satisfy the letter of the law, which it does, but it really doesn't make them better applicators. So just one last thing that I wanted to say about online courses is they are extremely intensive to produce very good ones. It takes time, money, and expertise. You're not likely to improve actual learning or promote adoption of recommended practices unless they involve a very significant amount of lead time devoted to planning and developing the training tool. So you have to combine subject matter expertise with knowledge of distance learning tools that are appropriate to the various audiences you're targeting. And an additional consideration that makes it difficult to keep up with this big task, considering the number of categories we have in particular, is the constant need for new training materials for each category in which online options are offered in order to keep providing up-to-date information. And it is very, very time intensive, and most educators who have done online training either on campuses with traditional university student audiences or for our applicators would probably agree that it takes, you think it might be easier, but it is not. It actually takes an awful lot more time, and it takes a fair amount of money. But it is a great option when it's available. So,
Emily, do any of the specialists, you or Gordon or any of the other crop specialists, have any online courses currently?
Can you hear me, first of all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the nutrient management has worked to develop an online course recently for nutrient management certification, and that is our major foray into online courses in that. On the ag side, although we're working on perhaps trying to get some of our beginning farmer information online as an online course.
Do you think that if there was support to do that, that there would be interest?
So I think it would be good. I think Amy Schober, who has worked with the nutrient management course, would probably be better able to answer that question in terms of what sort of comments she has heard from growers as to whether that is something that they want and how desirable it is.
DDA.
Obviously, they've worked to create those online courses for nutrient management for a reason. So probably there's some desire there.
DDA had originally asked us to do that as part of our contractual arrangement with them for nutrient management. So that's where that initiated, but we haven't put them out there yet to really know what the use of them is going to be. And there's about $6,000 minimum invested, but we work with a community professional online person to help develop those.
Allison, there's one more document, please.
While she's bringing up, in case I ask that question, and we'll elaborate on that.
Can I see the next page? Keep going. Okay, question 25. And can you zoom in on that one, please, Allison? This is from a survey that was done by the Certification and Training Advisory Group using 2014 data. And I don't know how to answer this question, but does the program receive revenue from internet courses? It was yes, sufficient to cover development and management costs, or no, not enough to cover the cost. A revenue source for states, depending on how it is done, what the total cost is, how many people you have availing themselves of it. But it could be an important source, particularly if Delaware can figure out which ones are really needed and which ones would be utilized often. This could be a reliable source of some amount of revenue for the program.
If people need that particular certification, it will not pay to, even though there's not many people and so we don't have that many classes, it will not pay us to develop those and use those. The only way we're going to have frequent and versus a way to solve the problem for those that we don't do any training.
That's exactly right, Michelle. And important in that is what I was talking about before, is keeping it up to date. Because if you have to keep it up to date, and you do want to, then you're really going to be sinking money into a hole to provide it for just a few applicators. But if there's something that can be utilized for a lot of applicators, health safety, environmental safety modules, where the basic principles might not change that much, and several categories could use them as a part of their certification, recertification credit, that might be something you could look at. But other than that, you're going to want to be sure that you have a lot of people who are going to want to do it before you would sink money into it.
Okay. Which leads itself very much then into Carrie talking about this partnership with the National Pesticide Safety Education Center. And Carrie, I think you need to go the whole way back to what this is, because it's new.
We'll do that.
So
the National Pesticide Safety Education Center is something that the Crop Life America Foundation has provided 2 years worth of seed money to build a virtual national repository for pesticide safety education. And the intent, and ultimately that center needs to be self-funding, so it's going to have to generate revenue, but to self-fund itself. But a secondary goal of it is to find ways to help states like Delaware, which are considered Goal 1, and there's 24 others, to also generate revenue with either the things that they develop or by promoting things that other states are developing and sharing the revenue that's generated. So even before, and I just joined that group February 1st, 40% of my time is going to be in the development of educational materials and coordinating projects that will assist states to generate revenue for their state and hopefully help other states do the same. And before I took that position, we, in October, after our stakeholder team meeting, or about the same time, had a conversation with the person who was the leadership role in getting that started, Dean Hertzfeld from Minnesota. And we did that really because New Hampshire asked me to help them get their online courses approved through Ben in Delaware so they could market them to Delaware applicators. And we realized that there was a lot of things that needed to be, that Delaware had requirements, like you had to be able to verify. You had to be able to verify who is an hour, and sometimes a station about with Dean Hertzfeld. And Dean said, hey, we have some money for demonstration projects. Do the two of you want to do a demonstration project that will, first of all, help us figure out a way to facilitate knowing what all the criteria are in the majority of states and business in U.S. modules. But in Delaware and New Hampshire, they require 60 minutes for credit. So in order for to meet those requirements, Penn State had to repackage theirs into 60 minutes and meet all the other requirements. So if we know what those more restrictive requirements are, then Pennsylvania can build them to meet those and then just split them in half or get 2 credits for them. So that's one part of what we're going to be doing, is finding out what those criteria are. And then we're going to do exactly what, to determine exactly what Amy's concerns were raised. How much does it cost? Is it going, what point is it going to pay for itself? And also, we are using eXtension's campus to deliver these. And so there is very little overhead. And I'm just going to use a magic figure of $20 because that's easy. For states who are premium members of eXtension, like Delaware, if Delaware offered an online course for $20 and 10 people took it, that's $200, and eXtension will only take 5% of that. So it's not a lot of money. In the 7 courses that I know that Penn State had the last time that I was there on a yearly basis, they had 8 courses and they generated about $9,000. So yeah. Well, yeah, but what this national, what the national center is going to do is, as Amy said, there's a lot more applicators in Pennsylvania. But if Delaware develops courses, we get them approved not only in Delaware but in Pennsylvania and Texas and other places. Then those states applicators can take them, and Delaware would get the majority of that revenue. If they haven't determined the cost of the revenue sharing split yet, but if Texas promoted them, it would only be fair that they would get part of that revenue somehow. And even if it's 10%, it's Delaware would be getting 90 or 80% of something instead of nothing.
It's a whole lot better way to do it than each state having to produce their own
Right.
and stick to just their own small, particularly in small categories.
Right.
I would say this gives you a way to target a small category, but across all 50 states.
Right.
So that might be a way to make that financially feasible for
That's
these
right.
categories that we were just speaking of. If nobody else is doing those and you do those, then everybody needs it,
Mhm.
then you're gonna have the use. So that's the way to make it.
Right. And after our conversations with the folks at DDA, primarily John and Michelle and I sat down, but he had gotten input from Chris. And Delaware's portion of that is that my salary that we can use money from this PSEP IMI grant to spend out by June. I'm going to provide the content, and then the National Center's contribution is they're going to pay for the person who's going to do the instructional design and put it in a package that can be put on the extension campus as an online course, because it would take me forever to do that, and that's their commitment. And then we are going to get it not only approved in Delaware, but other states also. And what that will do is we'll show states, okay, or Emily, for example, released a like Technophone, we would know that if you provide the content, then it is going to cost X dollars to put that into a package, and if there's a broad enough audience, it's worth that. And so that specialists can spend their time doing what they do best. And based on kind of the point that Amy made, is something that would be more universal in nature and reducing potential for pesticide exposure. As it's done, the content is primarily completed. I have to get a few visuals yet, but then in April, PEG is going to complete it and make it in a package. And what I'd like to do is I would like to send it out to the stakeholder team, members of the stakeholder team, so they can review it and get their input, and they can feel that they have some ownership on it also.
Great.
So that's what that one is. And the next one really came out of a request from a grower to Ben that they need to comply with Canada GAPS. And one of those requirements is that they have some pesticide training for their handlers that isn't just worker safety, it's food safety kind of oriented. And so I met with that grower this morning, and we decided would be most beneficial is we talk about the whole aspect of the pesticide registration, how it gets on the market, why it says the crop set is allowed to use on the label, and what those crops are, and the concept of what a tolerance is, which is the legal level of that residue from that chemical that's allowed to remain on that crop, not only in this country, but if they're going to export to other countries.
So is this something to BISMA?
No, it's more of a GAP certification, and honestly, I'm not sure how GAP fits into FSMA. Ben, you and I had a conversation with your food safety specialist, and I really didn't get a clear perspective from her either that she knew how it fit into FSMA. You remember?
No, I don't think she. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I don't think she had a direct correlation how it fits into FSMA either.
Okay. One thing we might do though is Gordon Johnson and Callie Neal have been trained in FSMA. You have to, this is one course, you have to go through the certification, one curriculum for FSMA. And I don't know, really take a look at that, have a conversation with them and just see where, if any, there's some connection. I can't imagine that there isn't some pesticide safety thing that's part of the FSMA training.
I can't either, but I don't know.
FSMA is Food Safety
Modernization Act.
And what Ben and I with his food safety person is when another opportunity for that FSMA training comes up, I think we both like to sit in on it, because that's one of the things that working with this grower this morning, you know, I was very clear up front. I don't get GAPs. I mean,
I've done some training.
Yeah.
So with the GAP people and the food safety people, and they were very separate. And I was the first. We were asked to do it overseas by the State Department, and it was the first time the two were put together. So I don't know whether that's yet or not.
I mentioned these
Explore that.
I mentioned it to Gordon down at the Vegetable Growers Association board meeting, and he was, again, not sure of the correlation, but he said that would be something that we could work on to look together.
Well, and I don't know if FSMA, I haven't looked at the FSMA curriculum, but I know it's set. So anyway, maybe there is.
The impression I got from our from Andrea Carey, the lady that you met here last Wednesday, is that the FSMA seems like it's more related to I guess the safe handling of the food products and hygiene of the people, And
diseases and human disease.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And bacteria related.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
But that again is an opportunity because surely there are other growers, not only in Delaware, but other states that need that box checked for that Canada gas requirement. And so I'm going to work with that grower to make it as relevant as possible. So it's something that's not just a checkbox, they're actually going to get something out of it. And once we do that, we can package it and market it nationwide. And so that's
Well, that Ag Safety Day that was at the fair a couple weeks ago, you attended, Carrie. Wasn't that FSMA related stuff that Gordon Johnson had?
It was not. It was it was more about brain entrapment and a wide perspective of the big thing was the DOT campaign that they had gotten
Right.
on the signs that said during harvest season or during a certain part of the season to slow down because of farm machinery. So it was not at all FSMA.
All right. I remember it was advertised in the Delmarva Farmer. I didn't know if they had any FSMA stuff.
Because everyone who chooses to, and I have a colleague, Jason DeVoe, in Canada, who's going to help me make sure that it meets whatever their requirements are. So that's really what that was. And the stakeholder team review that's under that, I really think that that's one way that we can have stakeholders not only have ownership of that course, but say to them, hopefully get them thinking about, okay, what else could we do if we had the ability? And when I was down in Georgetown today, we got talking about this, and it is. I think it has the potential for a special block grant, which apparently not everyone. There's not a lot of people that submit that, so we kind of talked a little bit about that, and that's as much as I want to mention right now because we really, don't have anything but I think it has a potential. I want to talk to Emily and Gordon and see if.
Yeah, and Emily, are you still on or did we lose you? I think she had another meeting to go to. I don't see her picture.
I don't know.
Okay. So we talked about the pesticide center, safety center. We talked about the exposure one, which is 50% complete. Did we include the safety lab, the table in that? This is the one we just talked about. So, and then having the stakeholders review those. So that's our goal is to get, and even if they aren't here at the meeting, then we can send this out and get feedback and on that. So, so the second thing that we have to do for our 3-year obligations then is to build this business plan. And Carrie and Amy, you want to update us where we are on that?
Terry and I plan to work together to populate the template over the next month, right? Really, the next couple weeks.
And it's really a template that was developed by Minnesota that helps you take a global perspective of what your needs are. And we've got a lot of it already done because of the needs assessment that we've done different ways and the SWOT analysis. What we really need to look at and get some input is the potential of where funding can come from. And I think the hard part is, other than a dartboard or a Ouija board, there's no way to say online courses is a possible revenue, but you can't say this much money. And so I think it's really truly just a best guess as far as that's concerned.
It's a tool to help, but I think Delaware's plan. We're approaching the end of our grant period. The end of the funding is in June. The final report for us is due in September 15th. And it seems to me Delaware, despite the fact that, yes, of course, the national team would have loved to have all the Goal 1 states be able to say at the end of this 3-year period, okay, now we've got the money, we've got the funding, we're ready to go. That isn't the case for probably most Goal 1 states, given how the national picture has continued to grow smaller and smaller, to wane, and with changes coming for more to be done through the new rules. So I think it's very fair and really very desirable for Delaware to, this is really perfect timing for you folks, because it's time to say, okay, this is what we've learned. This is what we'd like to do down the road if we can, and here's what we're going to do in the interim. Here's how we're going to handle it until we can get there, if ever. But
So
here's
that'll
our
be part of
plan.
our business plan, short term and
Absolutely.
long term, and maybe
Absolutely.
when Carol sees that, she'll feel better about it
That's
too.
really fair, because you can't do, I think Carol feels terrible that the money is not there. She is such a strong supporter of extension pesticide safety education programs, which is wonderful. But not everyone can act as comprehensively as she might have in mind. For many, many reasons.
And a big part of it
Small
is,
support base.
yeah, a big part of it, Ben, you can be a witness to the fact that Chris is very supportive of providing fund. Chris Wade from the Department of Agriculture is very supportive of providing funding for this until they come to him and say, oh, we'll take anything you got because we're this much money in debt. And then there's no choice. And so I think there are other options, and we're looking at some of them. And I think some of them are realistic, some of them are a little crazy, but what else can I say but no? And just keep moving forward as best we can.
Right, and I think that's really should be the goal of any program, is to design a statement of what you said some of the options are a little crazy, but here are the ones we know we need to do, here's how we're going to do them. Right? And some of them might be.
So you're going to work on this plan, complete this before June. With
I'm hoping to have it to the stakeholders by maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll work on that and get that that template fit, and that gives some sense of how we go about with that, and then can add in some of this online training and so forth as options for that. And then the other part is Carrie's already started working on our UDEL pesticide safety web presence. And I've gotten training through our
Unable to accommodate, just because I need some of those folks, and I went to that, and as good karma would have it, I've got too many Michelles. You people need to change different names. Not only their web presence, but their social media. And it was just like perfect timing. And I said to her, would you mind if we met? And so she and I met earlier today, and then we talked a little bit about what we want it to be, something that is user-friendly, so they can not have to navigate Delaware's Department of Ag webpage and play hide and seek to find forms or anything like that, and a list of things that I'm going to work with Ben and Chris that they see as right up front we want them to be able to find. So the goal is to have a web page that people can go to, whether they're applicators or educators or whatever. There's going to be 3 or 4 different links. Applicators, they'll open that page, and there'll be a quick link that they can go if they want to look up a pesticide label. There'll be a quick link if they want information about worker protection. All the things that they just need to be able to find very quickly and very easily without, 3 clicks and you're there is what we're aiming for. And then the same thing, Ben, with your forms, we can have a link that says Delaware Department of Ag under the applicators, Delaware Department of Ag, and under that will be a quick link that they can go to a form. I know you all, Chris is really excited that you're getting a new database that they can go online and fill out their renewal for their applicator certification soon and all of that. And so we can provide that right there. And if they want to do the chemical, the sweep, or whatever you guys call it, what do you call chem sweep, Ben?
Environmental sweep program.
The environmental sweep, there could be a link right there that is all the forms that they need, all the information that they would need, so they wouldn't have to go and look for it. And also your container recycling, anything that they would want to be able to find quickly that would help them do a better job either with pesticide management or environmental stewardship or whatever. And so, and then using what Amy did with the educators, have that educator page there that be password protected, so we can put some of these things on it that they can use as educational resources tools, but only they can get to it, or then your inspectors can have a password to that and they can get to that and use it, and not someone who's trying to make a living off of doing this to be able to access that. So that's really the goal with that. And Michelle, we had a great meeting, and we have a plan, and she said if I can get Christy that's up here, Miss Manley, to give me the general template. She said, come down 2 days, you have this. She gave me a list of things that I need to have, and she said we can have a webpage up, so I'm excited. Hoping we can get that done by May or late May also. And that's something that if we don't have a presence, if we aren't able to have a coordinator full-time or whatever, and someone isn't there to answer the phone, either at DDA or here, when someone says, what do I need to do to be in compliance with that worker protection thing? There'll be a source for them that they can quickly find. So.
Good. Well, I think that's helpful. And then Carrie and I had also talked about having a student this summer who would help with some of this web, putting things up, because the timing of that and putting that up. And I said to you, did you receive, there's a high school student who's interested in IT, who's very capable, that's met with Nathan Chesky, and was interested in that, and we can follow up on that as a student to help us. That's not a college student, but is a very capable up and coming college student.
Hopefully a recruit for
University of Delaware. Are you going to follow up with that student?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to wait and talk to Michelle, so we had I wasn't, so we had a plan. There's a little bit I could tell him, but also get her input about, does she have a concern about that? And she said no, as long as we train them and they're very, and the good thing about that is it's an FFA student who can use this as their supervised agricultural experience project. And so they won't only have oversight from us and making sure that they don't put up things from mothers and others against misuse of pesticides, but their instructor will be involved also. So that will be, and the great thing is it's a sophomore, and if it works out and he's really digging it and it's really working for us, we've got
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. So,
okay.
but I think that's a very, very good.
Yeah. So it's something. So in my mind, all more than we had. So again, when I talk to Carol, I think I just need to say, hey, this has helped. So it's helped coordinate what we're going to do and what the priority things are we're going to do going with that. So I think we're ready to talk about next steps. And Ben, do you want to talk about EPA certification and the training rule?
There's not a whole lot of new stuff to report. They're having a prep training course for the 50 states next week. They're taking March the 17th or the 22nd, I can't remember what date. And I think it's been bumped out now to May the 22nd for a federal review of the rule. So it's not officially implemented as of yet, to my knowledge. And as far as Delaware's perspective is, there's not a whole lot of stuff that we have to do radically to change, to update to the new standards of the rule. I think the biggest change for us would be we'll have to add an aerial applicator category. That was part of the new rule, but we already had the fumigation categories, both structural and agricultural soils and soil fumigation, excuse me. And then so the aerial applicator category is probably the biggest thing. They did not end up having a core credit requirement in the final rule, because I think when we had met back last October, we were kind of waiting to see what direction to take on certain things, because we didn't know what exactly was going to be in the final rule. And at the time, there was a proposal in there about having to have like certain number of core credit hours in a recertification cycle. That didn't come to fruition. So there's not an exact core requirement. That would have been something else that we would have had to change, because we just track credit hours for the commercial applicator competency areas, not specifically core and pesticide safety related stuff. It's always been counted as part of their agenda if they submit it in there. It's not necessarily been broken out. So pretty much the big thing for us is just doing the aerial applicator category. And when I met with Carrie last week, she said that I think you said Florida is a good resource to use or something like that, as far as they already have a good manual and a good test to use. So I don't think anything that we'll have to do is going to be too crazy, because we've always it seems like we've been proactive and kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of the stuff that's been included in that final rule change.
And since it's just the four of us, I'd like to also kind of get a little off topic, but when we were, and help me if I misspeak, when we were talking about that, that got a little bit into a conversation with Chris about, updating training manuals and delivery,
Right.
distribution of training manuals. And University of Delaware used to distribute them. And I'm not sure what all the politics of why that changed were, but I know that Chris said, all of a sudden they said, no, we're not doing that anymore, come get this stuff, and it went over to DDA. And I guess this is where I'm hoping you'll make sure I'm speaking correctly, Ben. Chris didn't seem to think that Chris seemed to think that that might be a conversation that could happen in the future, that could be something that DDA and University of Delaware can do cooperatively, is have someone update the manuals. And if University of Delaware takes over the distribution, then and they sell them, and that revenue could be something that could be reinvested into the program. Is that a correct statement, Ben?
Yeah, I don't know what the whole backstory is on that. I think that must have changed back when Larry Toll was still in this position.
Mm-hmm.
And I never met the lady, but I've always heard her name, Susan King. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like at the UD side. So I don't know what the backstory is on that. But as far as I think what we had talked last week is if we could, obviously it all revolves around money, which nobody seems to have any, but that's just the world we live in now. But as far as updating like exams and maybe selecting appropriate category manuals, I thought that would be a good collaborative effort between the state lead agency and the PSEP coordinator. As far as the sale of the manuals, I'd have to ask Chris. I don't know I'm not sure if there's politics behind that, or if that's something as simple as, yeah, you could do it, or no, we have to do that. I don't know. I mean, I could ask him, but if you guys used to do it, I don't see why it would be a problem.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I do know that we gave those things away in the past. I know we won't be able to now. We're gonna have some cost recovery because it costs to print them, costs to do all this. And so at a minimum, we have cost recovery, and we need to have enough cost recovery to support the person who's doing the writing of them. So that's what we're gonna have to do.
And the way it's been working now, it kind of works. It's kind of like a one-stop shop. When they come in to register for the test, they can buy the manuals right here, and then we just, run the credit card and provide them everything. So I'm not sure how it used to be in the past. I don't know if they went to the UD extension for the manual and then signed up for the test at DDA. I'm assuming that's probably what they did, but.
Still, if you end up having somebody from UDE be responsible for reviewing and helping to update them, it seems to me you do need to do ongoing cost recovery with some of the money coming back to the DE program.
Because we're gonna have to contract with somebody to do it, because I don't have anybody to do that. So it's not just an agent doing it. We're talking safety piece of it. We're not talking.
And to be fair, the way I look at things in my state, and I know our administration absolutely does, if it's just cost recovery to the penny, it's not worth my time. My administrators do not want me spending my time away from other things. So just hiring somebody to just write something is kind of a loss to the program unless you're getting something back for it. We have to all start building a better world for pesticide applicators and those who use their products. Mm-hmm. And that means that we'll have to do better training and better regulatory stuff for them, and we have to charge for those things.
It's private good. And
it's private good.
It's for the good of the business. So it's private good, and that's where we don't have to make money hand over fist. We just have to cover our costs and make it worthwhile of doing it.
I think we're usually not acknowledging what costs there are, because we actually have to develop the research, you have to develop the outreach.
Yeah.
And that's where
we
I
need to
thought
build that into the business plan,
Right.
though, as you're writing it. I think we need to incorporate that into the business plan here.
And would you check that with us, Ben? Would you check with Chris and see if there are any politics that would prohibit that University of Delaware would kind of take that back over with support from, if there is support available from DDA to develop them, but for the sale of them to be able to cost recover any cost recover and then a little bit maybe extra of any development for those manuals.
Okay, yeah, I can ask them.
Some there won't be any cost recovery because, like the seed treatment manual, that's going to be done on a national level, and it could be just sold through University of Delaware, and so there wasn't any investment in developing it, things like that. So it's a lot more complicated, but at least we need to know if the first steps are even worth taking.
Okay. All right. Is that everything then on the certification and training rule then? Did we cover everything?
Yeah, I think that hits the most important parts out of it.
Would you how about if you would kind of
Do that. Yep.
I haven't received any, as director, I haven't received any written notification that they're coming up this year, just through the grapevine. So I don't have anything to base this on other than the conversations that Carrie's been involved in and Amy's been involved in that indicate they are forthcoming. The discussion that we had with the chairs, the ag chair, build that, and I was like,
It's really important as part of this
process.
that it could have been a way that they might like, but it doesn't fit what they do. So fine.
Yeah.
You have a better way for Delaware.
So if we actually get those funds, and I don't know how much that will be, and if that was going down, I think that might be appropriate. That's in line with what we talked about.
Yeah, that sounds okay.
I think your inspectors are pretty much in the same thought process as Michelle's educators, unless I read them wrong.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, and
So that seems to be the missing piece, and the best piece is see the check, see the dollar amount, and then see what it's going to cost us to do this. So that's where that's hopeful. That's a helpful thing. I think we can build that in our business plan. Again, another thing to help generate, well, it doesn't really generate any revenue, but it does help support pesticide safety in the state. So final reporting. Do you want to talk about that, Amy?
Just to say, as I said before, that going back to our approved work plan, our final report is due on September 15th of this year, which gives us time between really the end of the grant funding and that final report. But we have a template to follow that they have really liked, a report that has really positive. That's helped you look into the future to really develop and provide a good plan that will serve your needs in today's world in a realistic sense.
And on what funds we have.
With what fits with Delaware.
What funds we have and what's available. So, that was the goal all along, was that we do the needs assessment, we bring people around the table, and we would have these conversations, and we would come out on the other side informed and putting an appropriate plan in place. I think it was never, we're going to do this and hire a person, that was not.
what are the needs?
And here's one thing that I think you have really strongly identified today in my mind. This has always probably been I see it as a strength of your program all along. But you put the last piece in there. A lot of your extension people are already delivering a lot of what is very strong about any pesticide safety education program, which is they have plenty of work to do on their time. They don't need
You need to be an expert in what you're providing. I mean,
That's
you
exactly
don't
right.
get up there and just do something that you're not an expert in.
That's right.
So,
At our last meeting, I went to the pesticide safety stewardship meeting at San Diego, and I was talking with a couple of other people about some of us have really strong expertise in certain areas, and we could develop materials for others to share, and we do, but it's hard for them because if they get asked a question, they can't really answer it. So we're trying to find ways to help other people do that and be there to answer the questions for them. But your folks are doing a great job of what they already do, which is a strong piece of pesticide safety education, which you couldn't do without. So you've identified the pieces that you need to add and how you're going to do that. And I think that's all anybody wants to see.
right.
So
I think it's great.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm pleased with where we are. We'll get this final report together on this, and then I think for you and I, and our partnership between DDA and UD Extension, we've come a long way in terms of talking about what we need, what we can do together. We're having conversations that we've never had before, so that's a positive thing as well. And we'll just continue along this line to seeing what funds do come in from course development, what comes in from any revenue that can be generated from these EPA pieces. We'll piece it together. we'll piece it together in a way that's meaningful. And so I think that's where we'll go with that at this point. So let's discuss then the action items that have come out of today. Carrie, have you been keeping track of those?
Yeah. The action items, the first one is that we're going to complete the online course, Reducing Potential for Pesticide Exposure, by May, and have it out to the stakeholders for their review and input with a little bit of a reminder or asking them to think of that program we have to plan and we'll keep that, and it'll be a constant work in progress, but the goal when we get to them is to having a structure that they will understand where we're headed with it, and if there's additional things that we need to add. EP is able updates on anything that you learned from your prep course next week, and we can share that with the stakeholder team. In the minutes and the notes of this meeting, I will just basically include what you indicated as EDA's perspective of what it will likely mean to Delaware, and that it has been pushed off until May. EPA funding and support, as Michelle said, I think all we can say is, and unless I can get something definitive from Kevin Keeney, this is what it is, all we can say is that the division chief of the Office of Pesticide Programs has indicated that money is forthcoming, and it will be retroactive for the last years. But I will continue to stalk him and find out what that means as quickly as we can. Final reporting, we just have that on our radar, so it's not really action.
So that leads me to when we really need to have our next meeting, and we've listed here early June. Here saying we're going to get a lot of things out to the stakeholders by May. Does that mean we're going to kind of give them some weeks in May to look at that, and then we would have a call in early June? We probably should get that date set before the three of us leave. And Ben, are there any dates in early June that aren't good for you?
I usually try to leave open the last week of May and around the first week of June, because I'm the observer for the transect surveys that we do with UD, DENREC, and DDA. So I work with, it's basically to help report conservation tillage practices for the Chesapeake Bay model. So I help observe the cropland residue after planting. So depending on the season and what kind of planting progress we have to go out before the row closure on corn, but after full season soybeans are planted. So usually it ends up being last week of May, early June. So I would try to leave that open on my end, but I don't expect you to hold up progress on your end just because of that. But I just want to let you be aware of that, because that usually takes us, usually have to block out a whole week for that to do the whole state.
If we go into the week of the 12th of June, do you think that leaves enough cushion time there?
It's possible, as long as we don't have a delayed planting season, which that's all weather dependent, so you don't know yet.
Okay. Well, we'll get a date set, and then we'll have to work around that, whatever it is, and
okay.
Maybe you can have Chris join us if you're not able, or something like that.
Yeah, we could work something out.
Okay.
I think that, Michelle, if we can look at that before we leave here, I'd like to propose that when the notes go out.
Getting them together one time, that you would like to keep them as your advisory body.
And I think that would also give an opportunity, hopefully by then the potential is, and have them say, okay, let's set by June.
And if some people want to rotate off or get off the board, that's a really good time to have them go. If they really don't want to be on it, you probably don't want to have them on it. From now on, use who you. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that needs to be face-to-face, though. It needs to be a peer meeting, and
that particular one?
Yes.
In June. I won't be able to be here. I will be in Michigan. But
Okay,
otherwise, I
June,
absolutely agree.
Oh, I will.
I will. I will be.
And the only problem, again, with a June meeting, too, is
Well, but if we set it ahead, and some people won't be able to make it, I know some of the agents might
Well,
not.
remember we did that one in the morning. The other thing we did is over lunch. We found that doing it over lunch, people have to come in for lunch,
Yeah,
so they can eat lunch and
Yep.
be on the call. So
Okay. Well,
we don't have a lot of producers on the call.
And you know
on
what,
the
if you
committee.
keep it a small meeting and really focus with maybe more stuff to go out afterward, maybe that's a
Well,
good way
there's
to do
some
it.
multiple things we've talked about sending out
That's
to
true.
have people review, and it's gonna be a very busy time for them to review.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to make that concise and key points and.
Maybe we should rethink how much we want them to review, or what we actually want
Need
to
them
ask
to
them to do. Yep. Where you would best, if you want to prioritize, because that's a really good point, Michelle.
Okay, well, thanks, Ben, for joining us for the conversation.
problem.
And we'll be in touch as, continue to be in conversation as we move forward and work on these things.
And you're in Baltimore all next week, correct?
Say what now?
You're in Baltimore all next week?
Yes, yep, that's correct. Except for Monday morning. I'll be in the office Monday morning.
Sue, I just saw your name pop up. Thank you for joining us. I'm not sure where you joined us at, but we really just reviewed the things that we sent you, the progress report, and we talked about some online development, course development that we're going to be doing, and we'll be sending out that online course that we're developing for stakeholder team members to review. And we're also, another big thing that we heard from the stakeholder team and DDA was the need for a very user-friendly web page that producers and educators could access information very quickly. So that's a big work in progress that we are looking at. The EPA certification rule was put off until May, and Ben's going to learn more about that next week, and will get back to us with any major developments. Was there anything else that you had questions about?
No, I was in the field and had a meeting at 3, so I was able to get back by a little after 4. So I just logged in and have been listening ever since then. So
Okay.
I will read what's sent to us
Okay.
after this meeting.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Sue, for joining.
Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
And is that date in June that we talked about, around the week of the 12th, does that seem reasonable for you? And maybe a lunch meeting?
Yeah, depending on the day of the week, lunch is not good for me, but I usually teach a fitness class at lunch, but I can always get a substitute if I need to on one given day.
Well, since you're here and you get to have first voice, is there a day of the week that's better for you?
I don't know what my summer schedule will be, but probably Tuesdays or Thursdays are better.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Or a morning meeting is better than a lunch meeting, but I mean, I'm flexible.
Okay. All right. Well, since you were so diligent and joined us around your busy schedule, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a privilege of being
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks. We'll sign off and leave the meeting at this point. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Do this up there. Do enough of these two. So Allison has to close out the
There's
very good.
a lead me down the bottom right hand corner. You see the red writing? It says lead.